everybody, welcome back to Middle Earth. Episode 5 just dropped, and this is the Watching Now podcast where we go full on nerd for streaming TV, Easter eggs, breakdowns, and sometimes spoilers. But listen, we're going to be doing spoilers because this is the Rings of Power, and we are so jazzed to talk about it today. I'm going to be your host. I'm Drew Lewis, and I kind of run the show over here at CouchSoup, and I'm lucky enough to be joined today by 3 amazing guests. We added an extra special guest today. I'm so excited, but let me talk about our OGs. We got On, who is our elf enthusiast slash sort of like just the super ultra fan. I'm going to call you the ultra fan of the show because that's what you are. But she comes to us from her TTRPG role-playing channel called D5. You got to check it out. Go over there and hang out with her on all the role-playing stuff. And we got Chris Mills, who is our like Tolkien librarian.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so stoked. Our new special guest, WizardWayKris, who is our resident elf boy, and she is known as the elf enthusiast.
I do a lot of Elvish stuff.
Yeah. If you follow them, you'll notice you put all these great translations of all the Elvish stuff. So if you're ever wondering, like, what does that say? If you're watching the show, what does that say? Where do you go?
WizardWayKris on most platforms.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're excited to have you. So let's get started with, we're just going to do real quick a non-spoiler review of episode 5 called Halls of Stone. But let's start today with Chris.
This episode, I enjoyed this. It seems like it's bringing the threads a little closer together. You've got a lot of dialogue. It's not as heavy on the action. You get to see a little bit more of Sauron's wickedness.
On, what did you think? I caught you mid-drink. Sorry.
You did. That's okay. I'll get over it. I liked this episode just as much as the Ent wives and like all of that, because it was very emotion driven. And I really appreciate that. There's more of like this gaslighting and manipulation, but also last time I had tears of joy, this time I had tears of sadness. So I appreciate when it's being able to move me in such an emotional way, especially in like a bit of a whiplash. So I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm interested to know which scenes kind of got you excited. I wonder if they're the ones that I'm thinking of. But yeah, we'll get into that. That's great to hear. And WizardWayKris, what did you think?
The way that I have approached season 2 of Rings of Power is that their job here is to weave threads into a noose and then hang us with it. So
that's morbid. I love it.
Episode 5, we see everything starting to tighten into that rope. So all of the threads are starting to connect and combine, and you're getting that common through line. And we just get a masterclass in manipulation from Charlie Vickers as Annatar. It's so satisfying and so sad. This is not going to end well.
It's like one of those shows where you're watching and you're like, I know the ending kind of, and this is not going to go well for some of these folks, isn't it? We're not going to see some of these people
everybody
later.
knows the basic ending.
Yeah.
It was the prologue in the Peter Jackson films.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We all know how this ends.
It's kind of like when I'm watching Andor, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I know how this. I know how this all goes. Yeah, you guys
punches you in the face.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you guys. It's sort of this is not like an action. We didn't get any badass Galadriel action or elfin, taking out 20 orcs. But we got some. I felt like I was watching like every show that's like this, that has a ton of lore behind it, that you're sort of also doing a prologue to something. You need an info dump episode. Like you need an episode where the characters are discovering, learning. There's a lot of dialogue between characters, and you're learning character growth. So I'm here for that for a serialized television show, right? Obviously, if this was like a 2-hour movie, I'd be like, all right, I'm bored to tears. But it's not, and I'm thankful for it actually, because I think we got a lot of good moments that you guys have already brought up with Annatar, Celebrimbor, some interesting stuff even the dwarves, which they're still my favorite.
Yeah.
They're still my favorite. I'm sorry. Okay, well, that's our non-spoiler review. I think we're all kind of coming down, like we're still loving this episode or loving the show, even with episode 5 being a little slower. But I think we're all saying it's worth it, which is cool.
Yeah.
So let's break it down scene by scene, and warning for everybody: spoilers after this. So here we go. We start off the show in Khazad-dûm. We get a nice sweeping mountain shot. Kind of felt like the opening of Two Towers there for a hot second. I for a moment there, I was like, "Am I hearing Gandalf?" And it wasn't real. It was in my head. And we get a shot, and the dwarves are. You get a shot of the Seven Rings. And they have a nice little. I appreciate the sheen because Celebrimbor went the extra mile and created like a nice little casing for them where they all can sit.
That was really cute.
It felt like a set I could buy. You know,
Presentation.
Attention to
You know?
detail.
Yeah. Like I almost want it for my room.
He
like,
would.
He would.
Celebrimbor
Right. Yeah.
Celebrimbor is the type who 100% like if he's gonna do this,
Yeah.
he's got to have like 2 smiths just working on the display case
The display case. 100%,
because
yeah.
showmanship.
Yeah, I'm not throwing those rings in a little baggie. Come on now, like you got to get them 7 too. I mean, that's nice. It's nice. And we see King Durin take the first ring. He chooses the blue one. For all those, if you were wondering, like if you were gonna choose a color, I don't know. I guess blue's pretty solid.
Nice.
And
It's the biggest rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably was. It was probably the biggest. Huh?
Compensation much?
Oh.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
And we'll get into that because he definitely is compensating this episode, isn't he? And he starts hearing voices right away, and he starts walking down hallways, and we see him go into a mine shaft or a cave that the dwarves are digging in. Walks right past his son Durin. Durin does a little nod and doesn't really acknowledge him. And he walks up the stairs and into a room, and he puts his hand on a wall, and he's like, "We're gonna dig here." And everyone's like, "No, mate, like that's a bad idea. That's a low
Foundation wall. Why would you do that?
Why would you do
Yeah.
that? You're kind of like, come on, mate." And he's like, "Listen, we're digging you here," and he has like probably the best line I've so far in the episode, where he's like, "Next time I order you dig, you dig," and that comes a little bit later. But he grabs Durin hands him the axe after some resistance and starts hammering away. Which, by the way, the CGI on this thing is pretty good because it actually looks like it's pretty like
It looked heavy.
yeah, and I want to know what these hammers are made out of because those are badass, and I want one. But it cuts through this rock right away, and in a hot minute, he's seeing daylight. Boom, dwarves are saved. And
One thing I will say,
yeah,
especially like just because. Okay, so background. I have a degree in kinesiological sciences.
What?
It's my job to look at people's
know what that
bodies
means.
and know
Okay.
how they move.
okay.
Think of it like exercise science.
Okay.
So I watched this and had a completely different reaction because poor Durin, Durin the Elder, shall we say,
Yeah.
Durin the Third, it was shoulders, maybe a little bit of back, but there was no core, there was no hips, no legs.
Okay.
He did not
Yes.
put his full body into
No.
it, but I was like, okay, well, he's the king. He's not typically down there in the trenches.
Right.
I'll give this
Got
to
some
him. but-
arthritis,
Yeah.
I
It's
was also
true.
thinking that he's there in his full kingly robes and jewelry and everything, and it's like he
Fish
didn't
out of
change
water.
to do any type of mining work at all, and that
Right.
probably is in a practical way for the actor hindering movement. I'm reminded of Christopher Lee trying to get up the steps, and
Oh,
you remember in the he's I cannot get up these goddamn steps.
that's right. Oh,
More to the point,
just gonna tell him.
he has the ring, which apparently is telling him exactly where to be like Fonzie and hit the jukebox
Yeah.
to make the thing happen with little
Yeah.
effort.
And just two other things to point out in this scene. Like, there's a quick montage, and we kind of see them kind of digging. He finds a few more places, and they dig, and we see the sunlight being revealed, and on the areas in Khazad-dûm where they can now grow crops, and it's nice and bright. And there's a big speech by Durin, and everybody's cheering, And my second favorite part, other than the line, is next time I order you dig, you dig. I was like, holy shit. Was everyone chanting Khazad-dûm, Khazad-dûm. I was like, yes, it's so cool. I was like, that is awesome. I was like, I need the Khazad-dûm t-shirt, like right now, like Khazad-dûm.
I need someone to make an edit of the Khazad-dûm chant, but with Duhast.
Yeah, yes.
Dwarf keyboard
The
player.
drums and the heavy guitar.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it needs a
Metal
remix.
it up for us.
It needs a remix, 100%.
I'm writing this down to chat with people for merch.
Yeah, give me. The
Are you guys aware
Khazad-dûm.
of there's a genre called dwarf metal? At least one band that dresses up like dwarfs, and they
Yes.
just like look up this song. You'd like it, Drew, being into dwarves. It's like there's a song called "Diggy Diggy Hole." Is the one that comes in. Yeah,
I am a dwarf and I'm digging a hole.
Yeah, it's the lyrics are like that, but they're just these dwarves up there playing metal. It's like it's really a thing.
I'm so excited to look this up.
There's also there's a history of especially Silmarillion lore being turned into metal.
Oh wow!
There are a lot of like
Blind
Tolkien.
Guardian did an entire album called Nightfall in Middle Earth, I think it is.
Oh wow!
I don't know that one.
It's metal and it's just
it's definitely a
screaming
tradition.
about Feanor and the Silmarils and oh man, it
and
goes
there's a band
hard.
called Summoning that's all Tolkien metal. There's the band Amon Amarth, which is Mount Doom. It's like a whole thing.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. So we cut to Eregion, and the doors of Durin are being revealed by Celebrimbor and Chris's favorite guy,
Narvi.
Narvi.
I didn't mention Narvi before, but that was one of like my lore moments when you see this dwarf and like, oh man, that's Narvi. He would be here. And when, of course, the way that we know that is he's the dwarf that made the door, and it on like the whole second line under the arch of Speak, Friend, and Enter, it says, "I Narvi made these doors, and Celebrimbor of Holland wrote these letters."
Yeah.
No way.
Want to hear that in Elvish? I have it.
Yes, please.
I would love to. Yes.
Yeah.
So the inscription on the doors of Durin reads Em Durin Aran Moria, which is Doors of Durin, King of Moria. Pedo Mellon Amino, Im Narvi Hainechant, Celebrimbor o Eregion Teithanti Thuin.
So cool.
My
And
heart
that's,
is
like you said, Speak, Friend, and Enter. I, Narvi, made them like the doors, and Celebrimbor of Holland drew these signs.
I'm not crying.
I have a question too, since we have a
Absolutely, this is what I'm
resident
here for.
language expert here. So can you talk a little bit about the mode in which this is written? Because I myself am not an expert at all, but I noticed that sometimes and correct me here too, because I really only barely know what I'm talking about. When you see these Feanorian characters that are written, the vowels will be in these little symbols that either come over the preceding or following consonant.
Yes.
But in this mode, there are whole letters that are vowels, sort of like how we have in our alphabet, that are put in between the other letters just on their own. So what's going on with that?
So basic breakdown of the language stuff here. The elves were the first ones to make the Kirth, which are the runes. So the Dwarven runes are actually originally based on an Elvish runic language. So when people say it's the Dwarvish runes, they're technically Elvish. They were co-opted by the dwarves, and then the dwarves had a written language because of that.
Are you talking about Dairon?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
One of my favorite lore references from a previous episode.
We mentioned that Celebrimbor, I'm not Celebrimbor, but Círdan was talking shit about some old characters, Dairon, and
I love it. I would take offense, but but it was such a great callback. We have two main writing systems that are used in Middle Earth. One being the Cirth, or Angerthas Dairon, which then morphs into Angerthas Eregion, Angerthas Erebor, Angerthas Moria. All used just in different realms, different time periods, but it's all based on
also as sort of a retcon of why Anglo-Saxon runes exist in the Hobbit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we have the secondary writing system, which is the Feanorian alphabet, also called the Tengwar. The Tengwar is all of the really scripty, pretty stuff. Instead of harsh edges, you have a lot of curves. This is what the One Ring inscription is written in. So this is a writing system that can be used for multiple languages, just like we use the Latin alphabet for English, French, Spanish, German, etc. We can use the Tengwar to write anything in English. We can write other foreign languages as well if you go with phonemic modes based on the sounds. You can write Quenya, Sindarin, basically anything. It is a writing system. So what we see is that there are different modes for the Tengwar that are used in different situations or different time periods, depending. So what you're talking about with all of the symbols over top of things, those are called diacritic marks. Those show up in the Latin alphabet as well. You see them a lot in German. You see them with the Maori language. Like,
I mean, we have some too.
Weta
We're
Workshop
familiar with, like,
has those two diacritics over
and,
the E and A. Yeah. So
right, yeah.
the symbols that go over top letters are called diacritics. In the Tengwar, these are called the Tetar, and it's called the Oma Tetar mode, where you use all of those symbols, and those are used as the vowels for that particular mode. So when you look at the One Ring inscription, that is Omar Teta mode of the Tengwar. So you see the symbols being used for vowels. In the mode of Beleriand, you use much fewer, way fewer Tetar. So you use them for a couple things, like when you're using a W, or when you are labelizing, or labializing, which is where you add an N or an M in front of a plosive. It gets really technical, sorry. But you don't use them for the vowels. The vowels are given their own Tengwar, their own letters. You're saying that the doors of Durin, it's the mode of Beleriand. The doors of Durin are in mode of Beleriand, which was used primarily by the elves in Eregion, but you do see it used a little bit later as well. But primarily Eregion, they used mode of Beleriand. That was the typical mode.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, what we see on the doors of Durin is mode of Beleriand. So it just has slightly different rules, and all of the vowels are actual characters instead of being accent marks over top.
This is still this is Sindarin, right?
Yes.
So it's like, I was maybe thinking that the way that they spoke at the time maybe informed the choice of mode that they were using, but this is more of a historical thing, that this is how they would write anything anyway.
Yeah.
At this place and time.
I'm
and clearly before, if it's the mode of Beleriand.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely positive why they would choose to use mode of Beleriand over Omateta. Partly, I think it's because the diacritics are a little bit more difficult to carve into things. This is why even elves still used the runic alphabet later in their own language, because if you're carving something into wood, it's much easier to use straight lines than try and do something with all these curves in it. So
that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, because you could carve those whole letters more easily,
a little bit easier,
or they would become more apparent when carved in stone.
It makes things look a little less busy.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, there will be a test after this episode.
I could go on and on. This is my hyper focus for the last 20 years.
Like, I got about a third of that, and that was already like way more than I could ever imagine. That's amazing. And just the fact that Tolkien had that sort of in his brain.
Yeah.
When creating this, I mean, that's just mind blowing, right? Like,
he was constantly revising things. That's one of the joys and curses of learning Elvish, is that you realize very, very quickly that you're just going to have to make artistic choices, because Tolkien never intended for this language to be learned by other people.
And just like any language, right? It evolves and adapts, right? I mean, even
dialects are different.
Yeah,
slang
exactly.
is different. Yeah,
which is the whole reason he started writing stories to begin with, was to create a fictional framework in which the languages could evolve, and he could explain why and how these words arrive to be what they are. It's the language.
He's really just a geeky linguist, and he wanted to write a story that put context to all of his linguistic choices.
No way.
I love that.
Yeah, that's insane.
So Sorry, we got very distracted about the Doors of Durin, but
it's
continue.
cool.
If you're going
The
to bring
Doors
two
of Durin show up.
Tolkien nerds on here, this is going to happen.
This is going to happen, absolutely.
This makes me so happy.
But for everyone who doesn't know, and if you don't know, I mean, that's okay. But the Doors of Durin, you might have recognized from the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, and where they take
Entrance into the mines of Moria.
in the Moria before they meet the Balrog. And Gandalf can't remember the Elvish word for friend. It takes him
It's
a hot
written on the
minute.
door.
So
if he
funny.
had just
It's
read
so
it
funny.
in
Literally,
Sindarin,
Legolas
would've-
is standing there just like saying it to himself in his head. If he had just verbalized, like,
Yeah.
this is what
Right.
it says,
All
it would
you
have
had to
opened.
do.
always cracks me.
All you had
Like,
to do is just read the inscription aloud, my guys.
And that's a good lore point there too, as and it ties into what we see in the show. Because if you remember when we first arrive in season 1 at Khazad-dûm, there's the dwarf guard that kind of peeks out of the hole, and it's a very unfriendly situation.
Yeah.
Now they're creating these doors, which are not the main doors into Khazad-dûm. This is just a gate that's being created as the friendship between the Elves of Eregion and Khazad-dûm blossoms.
To aid
the front door, as you might
trade.
say, is on the other side of the mountains, where they come out in the Fellowship.
Right.
the main doors.
It's a door that you're
into
making for
Moria.
your new friends. So
Right.
Yeah.
it would say "speak, friend, and enter," and it wouldn't be as secret as normal as the doors normally would, because this is something that was being made in friendship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess after 1,000+ years, it kind of becomes a bit less known, right? Like,
Well,
what
the thing is, even if a riddle, like most riddles, it's once you know the answer, it's simple. If you forget, then they're just as secure as any other dwarf door.
Right.
And it just kind of got lost over time.
Exactly.
And that also shows how like compressed the timeline is, because by the
Very.
time they have the doors and by the time Eregion is destroyed and Khazad-dûm is a long time, so they use those doors for a hot minute.
Yeah.
And but because of the
I'm-
timeline just kind of
Annatar is in Ostin Edil, which is the main city of Eregion. He's there for 300 years. In the actual
300
timeline.
years. Yep.
Like
So he and
crafting the
Celebrimbor
rings.
work like we are seeing a huge compression of the timeline in this show, because they are forcing everything to happen within not just a short period of time, but one lifetime of men, because they
Yeah.
didn't want to have all the mortal characters dying off.
It's kind of a dilemma.
Understandable.
Yeah,
It's
that
like
makes
if we're
sense.
going to include any recognizable mortal men, it's going to have to be Elendil and Isildur. So that very
Yeah.
much means everything has to be compressed to the very end of the
Yep.
Second Age.
Squash it in
But-
the end. Yeah.
So Celebrimbor celebrates the success of the Dwarven rings. They're having like a little party. Annatar is not having it. He's kind of like, I'm going to go
Internally
upstairs
screaming.
internally screaming. I'm going to go upstairs and mope.
Yeah.
And Celebrimbor notices that his man crush has left him. And
No, like
Annatar,
it's such a okay. Like I can't fully in words explain or express how incredibly good Charlie Vickers' performance is, because it's all about the nonverbal communication that happens in these scenes.
Yeah.
It adds so much depth because it's all part of the manipulation. Like even just, you're toasting the dwarves and he chooses that specific moment to walk away.
totally.
Or
Yeah.
So
to eat
conspicuously.
or drink, because he
Because-
doesn't need to.
Yeah, he's
so,
in-
and
Well,
he's
yeah,
just kind of
but-
like,
But he
just
could
doesn't.
have if he wanted to
mm-hmm.
put that show on.
Yep.
That he chooses this moment to walk away and draw attention to himself and draw Celebrimbor away from the celebration is all part of the plan. Everything is so calculated.
Yeah.
And it's just masterfully written. So back to the scene. Go ahead.
100%.
It's so good.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, speaking of Celebrimbor, the leaves on his collar piece look like the leaves of Lorien, but I don't know if
They're
Lorien
holly leaves.
technically. Okay, is that what it is? Because they look so familiar.
Most of the styling for Celebrimbor specifically is going to be
Holly.
around the origin of the name Eregion. Eregion is the Holly land. Yeah, Holland. But it's
Oh.
based on Erig
Holland.
being the Elvish, the Sindarin word for holly. So
Okay.
most of the stylistic stuff on his robes is holly leaves. Looks kind of Christmassy, but
It
it's
kind of does. It was so pretty, and I was like, that looks like the other leaves, but that makes so much more sense. Gosh, the attention to detail that these
the
costume designers
embroidery
have
in
put
this is just so
Oh.
much fun.
I'm writing it down for
Apologies once
myself.
again, we get sidetracked. But Annatar takes that moment to walk away and draw attention to himself.
He does,
Yes.
and Celebrimbor notices and follows him upstairs. And Annatar is like looking off into the distance, again ignoring the party. And Celebrimbor is asking, like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on? Why aren't you having fun at the party?" And he's like, I feel the weight of our decisions, and we need to make the 9 rings." Basically, he's like, "Listen, like this is all fun."
But the brilliance is that he's not the one who says it. He
Exactly.
manipulates Celebrimbor into being like, rings for men. And he's like, I didn't say anything about rings.
Right.
And then Celebrimbor actually calls him out on it and says, it's a game you play, isn't it?
Right.
Where
Or like,
you plant the seeds of something in a person's head and then make them feel like it was their idea all along. And I'm just like, it's one of those, like, you can see that just there's a little bit of electricity starting to go to that light bulb.
Right.
just a
But
little
it's not
bit.
enough
There's
to
a
light it up
flicker.
just yet.
Yeah.
Even like before that, where he's like, I told you to keep your speech short, and he's like, I don't
I
remember
suggested
you
you
saying
keep it
that.
short. I don't
Yeah.
remember saying that.
Big
It
time
was-
abusive relationship.
Yeah,
So
100%.
many
This
abusive
is like
vibes.
triggering for probably a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, trigger
Yeah,
warning for
yeah.
the gaslighting and the emotional manipulation
It's
of
pretty apparent.
Annatar goes to a whole new level.
A whole
in
new
this
level,
episode.
yeah. But I mean, let's give Celebrimbor some credit here. He recognizes it enough here in this moment, even though Annatar makes a bold argument to say, like, we will find the men that are the best of them. We'll find the kings and that are best
Most
of heart.
noble of heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Who does he
well,
name drop here? Baron,
Baron,
Turin?
Tor, and Elendil.
Tor, not Turin, yeah.
I thought it
would, yeah.
odd that he didn't mention Turin instead of Elendil, because Elendil is the only canonical half-elf.
Right.
True.
But
50%
Turin
of
has
each.
kind of tragic issues. Maybe he wouldn't be willing, if
Turin-
under the
was a
assumption that
double-edged
the
sword
rings
with
are
Turin.
actually good, Turin is not the person that you want to
This
give
is
it to
this
with
is
his
fair.
with his
yeah.
whole dark rain cloud curse over him.
yeah.
But
Oh,
Tor,
yeah.
Tor, Elendil, and then Baron, son
Right.
of Bari.
Right. Which these people are all in the same descent, like line of descent with each other. Now that you think about it, too, it's
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They are
Wow.
they are all
Yeah.
connected in that commingling of mortal blood with
yeah.
elven blood.
This is basically Elrond and Elros's family lineage.
Yes, it's their
with
family
These
tree.
people,
It's
yeah.
true.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
the context. Yeah.
the added level of delight for me in him name dropping Beren is that Beren represents Sauron's biggest mistake and biggest defeat in the first age. Not Beren himself, but Beren was in his dungeon with Finrod. This is how Finrod actually died. He didn't die in battle. He was in a battle of spells with Sauron and lost, and then got, ripped apart by werewolves.
Which they did
But
nod to that because his
Beren-
body
Beren
has
is
got werewolf
in-
claws all over him.
Right,
And, yeah,
right.
so if
but-
you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Drew's like, I
but
don't
Beren-
know.
I don't know.
But Beren, who is name dropped in this scene, was also in the dungeon with Finrod during that. But Beren makes it out alive because Luthien Tenuviel and her hound Huan come and rescue Beren. And this Huan fights Sauron in werewolf form and defeats Sauron. So this was Sauron's biggest defeat in the First Age. He loses an entire stronghold to Beren and Luthien. And so
It was
it
Finrod's in the
must-
first place
It
anyway.
must stick somewhere in the back of his throat, like
Yeah.
saying what a great human.
And-
Beren
That
it
is a
was
good. That is a
basically-
good point. Yeah, he has to sort of hold his nose and choke it out to say this. Yeah.
So Annatar, so Celebrimbor, like, smartly enough, is like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't trust men. I'm not making the rings. He puts his foot down and he
Too
stands
easily
up to Annatar.
corruptible. I'm not going to do it.
Exactly. And Annatar looks so in. He's like, I get it. all good.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do it
You're right.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best manipulation.
Yeah.
When someone tells you no, you say okay, and then you present them with all of the negative consequences of them telling you no. The threat that is veiled in Sauron saying, I'm going to make them myself then, is you're not going to get credit for this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it plays on his pride, because could Sauron make these rings himself? Yes, he absolutely could. He has the skill set. But the point here is to use Celebrimbor as the front of this, because in order to sell this to the rest of Middle-earth, it is much better coming from Celebrimbor.
And on that point, think about the bearers of the three elf rings and all the arguments that we're seeing in the show at this point. If there had been no involvement from Celebrimbor, if it had just been straight from Sauron, they wouldn't be using these rings.
Yeah, they would
No, not at all.
They would have been thrown into the ocean.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, good point. So the scene ends there, and then we're back to Númenor with Elendil and Pharazôn, and we open on Pharazôn, and he is right away, caressing his scepter, and that's a euphemism. And Pharazôn here he's kind of like he's feeling a little high and mighty, highbrow, and he's sort of his ambition is getting away with him, and he's telling a story of why the elves built the tower where they built it, so we could feel it mortal, right? And
the Meneltarma was the holy site on Númenor when it was first constructed. It is the tallest tower on the island, on the tallest peak of the island, and it faces toward the west. It faces toward Valinor. And from the very top, on a clear day, if you have keen eyesight, you could see the Tower of Tol Eressëa, which is the island that the elves inhabit off the coast of Valinor. But it's the closest thing to Valinor that you're gonna get when you are immortal. And he makes the point, Pharazôn makes the point of they must have built it to mock us.
right.
The kings of Númenor, throughout the history of Númenor, they would reach a certain age and they would basically let go. They would die, but they would let go of their spirits.
Yeah.
They could gracefully just do that, and they would do it before they went senile and before they started to degrade, as people do in old age, which is completely normal. And there was a very peaceful transition of power that way. The moment they start viewing mortality as a curse, they say, well, I'm going to keep power as long as I can then. I'm going to stay alive as long as I can, and you're not going to rip my power from me. And with that shift in paradigm, you get the greed for immortality, and
you get a character like Pharazôn,
and you get a character like Pharazôn who takes it a few steps too far.
Yeah.
And his son Kemen, I hear that his name means something super interesting. I read this on threads from WizardWayKris. I'll let you take those.
Kemen is a Quenya name, which you could go into, like, why does this Númenorian whose father is all about rejecting the elven ways, why does he have a Quenya name? It probably comes from his mother, and that is then used as a manipulation tactic from Pharazôn manipulating Kemen. But the name Kemen is Quenya for earth. You see this in Kementari, which is a Quenya name for Yavanna. She's the one who made the Ents. She's one of the Valar. But Kemen means earth/soil, like the actual earth beneath your feet. Thus, I'm not surprised Kemen is a dirtbag. He's a product of his raising, but
man, is he a dirtbag?
But I find it funny. I think
that's
right in front of us all along. His name is Kemen, and that means dirt.
And speaking of Kemen, he is Pharazôn gives him a task, and we don't quite know what it is, but if he does this task, he will be revealed like what his mother I forget exactly what he says, but there's something that his mother thought
Like
of
wanted
him,
him to know.
wanted
or
him to know.
something like
Yeah. And we don't quite know what the task was, and we never get the reveal of in this episode of what Pharazôn teases him with. But we do cut to the blind queen. She's still grieving after her failed coronation, and Elendil's with her and kind of like ready to start a war. He's ready to rebel, right? He's sort of like, the ships are with you, I'm with you, we can rally.
Deeply loyal.
Yeah, 100% loyal, and you can get a sense. She puts her hand on his chest, and he almost goes to grab it, and she moves away, even though she can't see it. She can feel it. So there's definitely some love connection here. They definitely feel for each other. They're definitely in hinting at that. I wonder if they will take this any further, and maybe I'm asking you guys to tell me: is this something that I'm looking that I'm perceiving again? Like last week, I'm thinking like, oh, Galadriel and Elrond are about to do a thing, and you guys
and
like,
we
no,
went
no,
into
no,
it
no.
being like,
Don't be
no.
stupid, Drew. Like,
We
you know what I'm
went
saying?
into
Like,
kind of,
in a
like-
nice way. You guys bridged that
We're like,
nicer
well,
than I
there's
brought
a-
it.
there was a
But
difference
I'm wondering
between
if is there something here? Am I
Are
reading
you
into this?
right? Are you right to read chemistry in the performance?
Well,
Yeah.
not only
Yes.
chemistry, because I think that's there. But do these two end up becoming something, or
Like I think
lore-wise,
the way you said
no.
it last time was, are they teasing a romantic relationship?
yes.
And the answer is no.
Okay,
Correct.
that's my answer.
Yeah, because last week you talked about it, because you was like, did Galadriel and Elrond like get together?
Well,
Like,
right.
if we were like,
again,
well,
looking
I mean,
at
do they-
behind the scenes stuff and actor interviews and everything, Elendil, Lloyd Owen, who plays Elendil, has hinted that there is,
yeah,
there are vibes there. Now, whether they are actually going to act on any of it,
Right.
probably not.
Okay.
And that that owes to Tolkien being supremely non-sexual in his work.
Yeah.
Even when there are notes of romance, it's not explored through a sexual lens, which as an asexual person, I love that.
yep.
That's
as a
great.
demi, I love it.
See,
it's
I'm looking
wonderful.
for my Game of Thrones sex scenes, y'all. And I'm like,
Sweetie,
come
This
on.
is not for
Sweetie,
you.
I have
Come
to.
on.
I'm gonna hold your hand when I say.
Can I
this.
get a little elf love happening? With the ears and maybe a dwarf. I don't know. I might be into that.
No.
Come on.
That's what fan fiction is for, and that is
See?
why
Right.
the Tolkien
All right.
fandom has a very long history
Yeah. Speaking
of
of,
especially spicy fan fiction because there is no sex in the books.
yes.
The queen asks. Wow.
What did you see when you looked in
He
the
asked Elendil,
Palantir?
what did you see in the Palantir? Right. And he's like, I saw myself riding away, like from Númenor. I don't know what it means. And she interprets it right away as like maybe Númenor saved. Right. This means you didn't
She
see.
interprets this as you didn't see what I saw.
Right.
I
You
saw
didn't
the
see
destruction of Númenor.
right. And so right away she's saying, okay, then we got to go down this path. Maybe, let's not do anything rash. Let's, all like watch how this turns out. Right. And she
By
sends
trying
them,
to stop the prophecy, you fulfill the prophecy.
right.
Miriel presumes that Elendil seeing something other than the outright destruction of Númenor is a good sign. So
Right.
whatever you see yourself doing, go ahead and do that, because in her mind, that means Númenor survives. Of course, you never know how far into the future you are viewing with the Palantir. And also, there is a hint of smoke rising in the distance.
Yep.
in
I'm so glad I was the
Elendil's
only one who saw
vision.
that.
And my mind immediately goes to the fires of the temples of Sauron to Morgoth when Sauron influences the Númenorians later on. Canonically, we don't know how they're going to approach that in the series.
Interesting.
But I would love for that to be the fires of human sacrifices in the background.
Dude,
It's
that
so
would
dark,
be great.
but I love it.
It could even be when Sauron burns the tree of Númenor, which is kind of how it starts. He encourages Pharazôn to cut the tree down and finally gets his
Interesting
way.
that Elendil's
And-
vision there, if it's the burning of Nimloth, the
I
tree,
didn't think about the tree.
then Isildur should be there escaping with a sapling. Or cutting
Yes,
with it.
this is
Yeah,
true.
'cause
Yes,
he's gonna
yes.
descend to Gondor.
Oh, wow.
Sorry,
Oh, wow.
I'm
No,
skipping
that's
so far
interesting.
ahead. Apologies.
That's interesting. And we know that the Palantir typically is is right. Elendil follows her orders. He goes down to the ships, and he sees right away that all of his men are being stripped of rank, and they're handing in their swords. Kimmon's there, stoking flames, saying like, "You're no longer the captain." And he's about to. It looks like he's about to kind of like rally the troops, but he remembers what his queen said, and he says, "You're right. I am no captain," and hands in his sword, kind of quelling things, as it were. And he has a bit of a one-on-one with his daughter. They definitely don't see eye to eye. He is not happy with her choices.
I am the only thing that I'm kind of like interesting about is Iarien, how quickly she turned against her father.
Yeah.
I felt like I feel like I needed a little bit more hatred or reason for the hatred before getting to this point. I almost feel like I skipped a couple paragraphs somewhere. Like I understand why, but I needed a little bit more lead up to that. Because
they tried. It's just lack of execution, I think.
Yeah.
It's all of these things that Iarien is blaming and despising all have their root in the connection of Númenor to the elves.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which
and that's why she sides so firmly with Pharazôn.
Yeah.
Right.
Under the assumption that he would never consult that elf stone.
Exactly. And cut to thank you for that segue. Pharazôn tempting fate here. We see him uncover the Palantir. We don't quite see him use it.
Don't know if he used it or not.
I mean, let's call it as it is.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't think so?
I think it's fully possible for Pharazôn to be so convinced of his path and his superiority that he could just outright reject the pull of the Palantir.
More looks at it in disgust rather than temptation.
Because of what it represents.
Yeah.
So I could see it go either way, where he's a hypocrite and he uses it, or he is a true believer, quote unquote, and rejects it outright.
We go to Lindon, and Gil-galad has received the letter from Celebrimbor, and we get a nice like montage of VO. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
And he's receiving counsel that they need to sail on Adar now and ignore, and we should sell on Adar and ignore Galadriel's warning. And he's having the vision of the ring, some nasty things going down in his mind's eye, and he's not convinced. So, and then we get a quick shot of probably the worst shot in the whole episode of Elrond just running, just like, and it's like a 2-second shot.
We had to show the passage of him going to Eregion and then turning back.
I don't know. I loved the dramatic taking off the cloak.
I was like,
I loved that.
What is happening right now?
I personally laughed because I'm just like, no, not the cloaks. I just leave those. Like, those become important 3,000 years from now.
Found a horse. I mean, it's not like it's just like he's running like down the street. Like you can't like find a village with a horse and be like, all right, I got to make good time here.
But
like they literally ran the whole way.
That's an interesting point, though.
I was just a little.
As far as the mortal encampments between Lindon and
I just giggled a little bit. I was like, that's a little silly. He's still running. He's been running since last episode. Like,
but we love to watch the boy run. Okay,
all those pearls.
The only point I want to make here is, I find it interesting that, like, although the rings technically aren't corrupting the elves, or in the sense that we know that the rings are corruptible, or like how men can be corrupted by the rings, they are adjusting decisions that may or may not have been made because of what the rings are telling people. Like, so we see that with Galadriel. She's making decisions based on what the visions the ring are giving him, and now we see Gil-galad making decisions, wrong or right. We don't know yet. But
it's also important for the audience to know where the three rings currently are at any given point. So because the ring was given from Galadriel to Elrond, we need to see Elrond moving, that Elrond and that ring are back in Lindon at the moment. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to it. Khazad-dûm, we're back. And Disa is not real thrilled about King Durin's ability to find the sun shafts with the ring's influence. She right away is like, hey, like this is something that takes like years to craft. It is not something that you could just
Feels like cheating.
Yeah, like yeah, like
I
nice.
love her.
That actually sounds a lot like her. And another comical moment, like other than I don't think the running by Elrond was supposed to be funny, but I laughed. But a somewhat comical moment here in Khazad-dûm where Disa is trying to buy, I forget what she called it, like a singing stone, I believe,
tuning stone,
a tuning
stone, for their daughter. And there's a bit of a negotiation here, and they learn that King Durin has put a ring tax,
100% tax on something,
Yeah.
on everything. Like, damn.
Which
subtlety,
is
not his strong suit, apparently.
Yeah, our first clue that things may not be going right with the king in the ring, and Disa bumps into somebody, drops the stone.
150 coined stone.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on to that thing. You spend a little cash on that. It rolls forever. This thing rolls through the market, down into this thing, into this cave that no one ever goes into.
It is
apparently,
comical.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. It reminded me
I think that was meant
of the
to be a
wizard
little-
chasing his map.
Yeah.
My map of stars.
The stranger.
But it's funny. I mean, listen. I'm all for levity. Everybody needs a C-3PO in their show. And she goes into the water, or she goes into the cave. It's got a nice little pool. She does a little singing, finds her stone, which is nice, a nice touch. But something sings back. And
She reached down to the darkness, and the darkness reached back out.
Exactly, and it's pretty startling scene. She drops the stone. It shatters. And
The visual effect of the vibration hitting the water and coming towards her was fantastic. Loved that.
Did
That's a nice touch.
the water remind anybody else of where Gandalf and the Balrog fell into? It kind of looks like
interesting.
that cavern.
Yeah.
So I was like,
not sure if that's deep enough, but yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like the
it looks
callback.
very similar.
Yeah.
Same vibe.
Yeah. That's one of those things where I was like, almost like subtle, like, hey, that kind of seems familiar. I like that.
And another comical kind of scene, we see King Durin showing the rings to a bunch of other dwarves, and we come to find out that I thought I was watching like the other kings, like the other dwarven kings.
He says that they're emissaries.
Yeah, but then he's like, and he slaps
They're
the
not
hand
for
on one.
you,
He's like,
they're
not
for your lords.
Yeah, not for you, not for your lord. I was like, oh, the lackeys have showed up, and we're getting just a little in between scene. But he talks about power.
Moment of dwarven appreciation.
Yes.
Someone I had pointed out the wonderful diversity that we've seen in this season for the elves, and one person pointed out that the one hairstyle type that they hadn't seen was dreads. And so in this scene we had one of the emissaries is a black dwarf, and he's got really nice dreadlocked hair. And so I was like, there are your dreads. We've got a little bit of everything now. We've seen
dreads.
afro, we've seen really tight curl patterns, really looser curl patterns. There's been so much diversity. I love that. But someone had commented,
diversity.
Where are the dreads? And there they are.
Like, there they are. They're here.
There they are.
That is nice. It's nice attention to detail. And he Durin mentions to the emissaries that like, oh, you can get the rings, you can have this incredible power, but you're gonna have to give me something in return. We don't quite know exactly what, but we do find out later that it's a big percentage of the coin from each. Yeah, half. And I believe fealty, like they need to kind of like recognize Durin as like the king, I think, or is that, am I reading into that?
Basically setting up a hierarchy.
Yeah.
If they are providing Khazad-dûm with half of the wealth of all of their kingdoms, then Khazad-dûm is obviously the pinnacle of that hierarchy.
King is actually having a conversation with Chris, your favorite guy. What's his name? Narvi. Yeah, he's having a great conversation with Narvi, and the king freaks out. He's like, "Where's my ring? You stole it." There's a bit of like,
does that remind anyone else of Bilbo?
Yeah,
the paranoia.
There's a little bit of that, and he's like, and Narvi's like, "You said the ring was heavy," and I thought this was a nice callback. But I guess my issue here is like, and Chris, we talked about this in a couple episodes where you were saying that the dwarves are, I guess, not necessarily immune to the rings, but immune to sort of Sauron's. Like,
it doesn't work out the way the Sauron wants. The greed is the only canonical thing that we're being shown in the show that's also in the books.
Okay,
is it there's mention of how that the rings will make them richer, and but also that it makes them greedier. So
the vibe of the dwarven rings is that they do not succeed in giving Sauron complete mind control over the dwarves.
yeah,
Because
nobody
the
ever
dwarves were created
successfully.
by Aule, and
Yeah.
he doesn't understand the full
Nobody
nature
ever
of them.
dominates the dwarven wills.
Correct.
Okay, but
it plays up certain personality traits for the individuals.
okay,
So you have the paranoia that Durin already had is then amplified.
Okay.
His greed is amplified.
Which is probably why later Sauron just wants to get all the dwarven rings back, whereas I guess it's not really clear whether he holds the 9 at the point of Lord of the Rings, or if the Nazgûl still wear them.
He
It's
does
not really
hold
clear.
the 9. Yeah, the Nazgûl aren't even wearing the 9 anymore by the time we hit Lord of the Rings. Sauron just has
really?
them.
oh, wow. Just carrying around
Yeah,
in his eye
he's got
pocket.
those.
People
he
have
has
asked
a
me
couple
before
of,
what happens to the 9 when the 1
Yeah.
is destroyed. I was just like, well, he had the 9.
What's funny is some of the he Gandalf gets back some of the dwarven rings, but some of the other dwarven rings got eaten by dragons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, destroyed by Dragonfire.
True.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
Which also shows that these rings of power are not, indestructible like Sauron's ring is.
we leave Durin and we're back to Eregion, and there's trouble. There's trouble with the rings. There's there's tools flying around.
Trouble
floating
right
through the
here in
air.
River City.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we got trouble.
And help me out. Is it Miradania?
Mirdania.
Mirdania.
Which I won't go huge into it, but Mirdania is a conundrum for me because her name does not follow Elvish naming conventions.
Oh, interesting.
No Elvish names end that way. Ia is not done with Elvish names. If they had named her Mirdanwen, Mirdanel, you could have done different things that would have fit in the guidelines that Tolkien himself provided. So the way that she doesn't have a truly Elvish name is pinging my spider sense. It's a little red flag that makes me. That's why I believe that she might still be Celebrian. She may still be Galadriel's daughter. In my mind,
Oh,
this is
really?
fan theory.
That would have been interesting.
Wow.
When
well,
she first appeared, we
thought she was
lore
like,
nerds thought that she was Celebrian, and then they gave her the name Mirdania, and we're
Yeah.
like, but that's not even an Elvish name. Like Eärion's original name that was leaked was Kareen,
oh, that's
Karine?
right.
and we were like,
Yeah.
that's not an Elvish name. What are they doing? And of course, she ended up being Eärien instead. Now an actor did call her in the show Mirdania, so that is the name
Yeah.
she is under
Currently.
in world.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't follow naming conventions, so it might be a pseudonym. That's just a theory. I'm trusting the writers more and more with
Yes.
this show.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am very curious about the naming of this elf. It's a bit sus, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm willing to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's. I
I'm
think
willing
you
to
might
wait.
have to.
It's very much the Thranduil.
Yeah.
I can wait.
Yeah.
Oh.
Could be. Oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
I role play him. It's my job.
You're good
Well,
at
it turns out the tools flying around is actually Mirdania, and she's wearing a prototype ring, ring of power that makes you invisible. We've seen this before with the One Ring, which is I'm sure not a coincidence, considering this had the full weight of Annatar behind it, Sauron.
Yeah.
And it turns out that she's seeing the unseen world. She's seeing what Frodo, I guess, I'm assuming as a casual watcher and fan,
Right.
this is like kind of what Frodo sees when he puts on the One Ring. He's seeing
Yes, when he goes into the Wraith world
Right.
in
Yeah.
the Peter Jackson films, it is essentially seeing into the unseen world.
yeah,
See forms that are hidden.
right. And she
I was-
calls out that she sees a dark shape with piercing eyes. So, and we all
Yeah.
know
Piercing
that's-
eyes and fire, skin of fire.
Yeah.
And all of us who know the lore are just like, she sees Sauron in
Yeah,
the room.
yeah, and he's right there.
Right.
He's
you mean
right
the guy you were
there.
staring at? That guy? Yeah,
As-
that's him. Come on, put it together.
Who is not like, he's surprised by the disappearance and stuff, but you see the look in Charlie
He's
Vickers
like,
as Annatar's eyes where he's fascinated. He's like, oh, I didn't know they could do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? I saw it as like
That's how
there's
I read it.
Yeah, I saw it as like don't call me out, don't call me out. Like, you know, like
I
saw it
I
as
didn't
like
see
he's sort of
fear.
like
I didn't see fear. I saw fascination. He's just like,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah, but almost like
okay,
like he's
this
not
is new.
staring. He's sort of like looking away. You know, like don't
When
what you would
she
do if you don't
starts
want
to
a teacher to call on
describe him.
you.
Yeah,
you know?
when she starts to describe his
Right.
actual form,
Yeah.
there's discomfort there.
There's
You
this-
can
yeah,
see
there's a
the
little
wheels
bit
of-
turning.
Yeah,
Of how
exactly.
am I going to spin this?
Yeah.
He's already working on it.
Yes.
I hope I wasn't the only one that when she started to describe the place that she was in, there she says mist and she pauses and then says darkness. I was really upset that she didn't say shadow, like mist and shadow from Pippin's song from Return of the King. I was kind of just sitting there. Yeah, and I was like, say shadows. She said darkness. It was just like
Mist and
son of a
shadows,
little
cloud
thing.
and shade. Yes.
Yeah, I was hoping
It would have been an interesting callback for them to have done that.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it's interesting. She's basically describing like worst situation possible, and it's here, and everyone's just kind of like, oh, that's not good. And then like Celebrimbor and Annatar are like, oh, you're fine. You're with friends. Everything's fine. Like if someone like was invisible one moment and then woke up and it's like, we're surrounded by fucking darkness. There's a dark guy over here with fire eyes. I'd be like, well, let's get the fuck out. Like that ain't good. They're all like seem to be fine with it. I don't know. Like it seemed like she gave a pretty good warning here, and everyone just kind of like, yeah, weird ring shit.
The first thing you do if you're the manipulator in the room is you calm the person down. You insist that everything is fine.
Totally, they both
and
did.
that you are their friend and they are safe with you because
I
that's
just
the
think the
first
other
part
elves
of,
kind of should have
that
been a little
wasn't
bit
me
more
that you
like,
saw just now.
Maybe this
Yeah,
ring stuff
the
we're
way
doing
that-
isn't okay.
Glad you're
I
back.
don't
You're
know.
safe with me. Remember that.
Yeah.
Remember how safe
And-
you are with me.
and taking that and weaving it into it's actually Celebrimbor
Oh yeah.
who's the thing you saw, and
I
Yes.
didn't want you to see it until I helped heal him.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm
that
jumping
was,
ahead.
ugh.
No. I mean, we can get there. Real quick, Durin arrives right before Celebrimbor is about to like give away like, how do you make these rings the right way? Durin's here. Oh, okay, I'll go see him. And he goes down, and Durin right away is like, listen, there's something wrong with these rings. My king's he's greedy. He's not doing the right thing.
Greed
and
has never been his way.
his
Yeah.
way, which I guess we'll see how that
He
is.
was super cautious about mining for Mithril. It wasn't
Yes.
about the greed. He wanted safety for his people first.
And he put all those like
foremost.
not sanctions, but like structures to not dig deeper. And now he's like, send them away. You
Yeah.
don't need them.
Yeah,
Everything's fine.
and
all the fail safes. Yeah.
Fail-safes.
when Celebrimbor pushes him, he's like, no, the rings are perfect. There's nothing we didn't. And then he's like, well, maybe it's the ring maker, and he calls out Annatar right away.
Mhm.
And that,
What do you know about this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this even gets Celebrimbor's wheel spinning a little bit more. Like you could see it like hit him in the face a little bit. Like, yeah, you know what? That is the rare, that is the unknown element here. The added
Annatar
element.
is up in the tower just looking down.
Just looking down, like I have sight
And
beyond.
if
I'm like, is this a
elven
Thundercats
ears,
moment?
if
Like, can he
elven
see
ears
how
can
this is
hear,
happening?
you know that this Maya knows exactly what has just been said.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, the wheels start turning.
I mean, that tower's pretty tall. You think he can hear what's going on down there, or just he's
we all-
inclined?
We all know how far Legolas can see.
That's true.
Like,
He can read lips. too.
Annatar
Yeah.
is just.
Unless it's the rising smoke from a pile of orcs. They suddenly just come up on him. And
Like,
he's like,
oh yeah, those guys.
He had something in his eye. It was an eyelash. Give him a break.
It's fine.
So yeah, then we get back to Annatar real quick. He's like stops watching and goes back, and he's comforting Mirdania, and he's kind of like you said, he's kind of like saying, "Hey, everything's gonna be okay." And I'm doing, you saw this thing. I found it interesting.
She asks him, "Have you seen it?"
And he said,
Like,
"Yes,"
because it's like you're an emissary of the Valar. Have you seen this unseen world? And he's like, "Yes, of course I have."
Yeah,
And he's just like, most people who see it never want to come back.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so many lives.
Kind of like, I'm so proud of you.
I'm so proud of you for resisting. You're so great for resisting.
Oh.
And I'm so sad that, it pains me to say
And then just like
that I didn't want you to see him like this until I'd had the chance to heal him. And of course she's like, wait, what? We're talking about Celebrimbor. Like he doesn't even say it. He lets her say it so that it's more real, and it was her idea.
And the way that he does this is so sneaky. Not only does like this is also slightly random, but the more we see of his like crown, the more it looks like snakes,
serpents.
And the more it looks like that.
Especially in this episode, So
it
looks like snakes are starting to crawl in.
Yeah, and the way that he further manipulates her by complimenting her hair and the way it looks like Galadriel. And I was like we've talked about the importance of her hair. Everybody knows the importance of it and what it means. And for him to compliment her like that and kind of like, you know, take a look
you
at
were the
her
spitting
hair.
image for just a moment.
And
it works. She's flattered.
If she is Celebrian,
then that's huge.
Then that's a whole other level of you just like, my mom is this absent person in my life, obviously. But everyone admires her, and there's a certain hero worship, whether they're related or not. There is hero worship involved. So to be complimented as the likeness of Galadriel. Here's another obscure language thing. So Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Celebrian are all named for their hair.
Really?
Galadriel is the Sindarinized form of Alatariel, which is the after-name that Celeborn gave her. It's not her given name.
I didn't...
but she was so widely known by it because it described her. It named her for her hair. It is she who is crowned with golden radiance is what Galadriel means. Celebrian is she who's crowned with silver stars or something, with a silver firmament. So named for her silver hair. Gil-galad, Galad being in both Galadriel and Gil-galad, he was named for the brilliance of his silver hair that could be seen from leagues afar, even at night. So the depiction of Gil-galad as brunette is not accurate, but I don't mind.
It's like almost black dark.
Hair. But those three, he was named for the brilliance of his hair, his armor, and shield that could all be seen from leagues afar. Yeah.
The way that I didn't even know that.
So
that
again,
was not
the hair comparison, being told that you have hair like Galadriel's. Again, it keeps poking
huge.
At me that she might be Celebrian.
Yeah, I also felt like Annatar or Sauron here is also a little obsessed with Galadriel too, right? This also, I saw this as twofold.
It can be read that way.
Yeah, like not only is he manipulating her and calling her, like obviously comparing her beauty to something like Galadriel, who is probably one of the most famous elves of the age, but his obsession too with seeing her, like the first season really implied that as well. Like he sees her in a way as I almost want to say an equal, right? Like he would like her to be. Doesn't he ask her to join him?
He sees her as the mightiest of the Eldar,
right?
Which she is basically. She is renowned in Tolkien's works, and I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. That she's listed that it's basically her and Feanor are like the two greatest.
His later writings, especially as he increased her stature with the later writings that didn't end up being in the published Silmarillion. But yeah, you're correct. He would kind of revise her character to be great, and it's that's one of the things I like about this show. We had a lot of early criticism from people in this show about the whole aspect of Galadriel being like a warrior or too much of a hero or something else. But I think that's just shows a misunderstanding or lack of knowledge about what you're saying there.
It's it's right there in the names. Tolkien is so good about giving us names that give us insight into character. And it's from little characters like Lindir, Song Dude, He's a random bard in Rivendell. Do we need to know anything more about this guy? No. So he's called Song Dude. But then you get names like you get Handman, Camnir. Same sort of thing. But then you get names like Galadriel, and you have lore behind them. And Galadriel's mother name, which is typically elves, at least in Noldorin tradition, the Noldor being this sect of the elves that Elrond, Galadriel, Gil-galad, they're all part of the family of Finwë. In naming conventions, elves are given a father name and a mother name, and then later on, typically they are given epithets or afternames. Galadriel being one of those afternames for her. Her mother name, which is typically regarded as being, what's the word I'm looking for? Mothers were supposed to name their children with a certain sense of foresight. So whatever they named their kid tended to be some aspect of them that they actually become. Galadriel's mother name is Nerwen, which is man-woman.
She was Amazon in temperament, Tolkien says.
She was just as active and just as forceful in personality as any man there was.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So it's, again, right there in the name. All the criticisms, I'm just like, you guys don't know Elvish, obviously. Because, like, you're really cherry picking what you want to say, and that's okay. But if you take a deep look at the character, she has depth.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Yeah. We're back in Númenor for probably the most gut-wrenching scene of the episode.
Okay.
Here we are at an ancient shrine, and Elendil and Valandil, right? Valandil, are paying homage or paying respects, lighting candles, and sending them off to sea. I'm assuming for the dead, the fallen from the most recent battle in Middle Earth.
Continue on. He says some very interesting words that will be familiar to fans of both the book and of the trilogy. He says about a green country under a swift sunrise. And that's familiar because in The Return of the King, it's one of the things that Gandalf is telling Pippin in his little monologue while all of this chaos and war is going on. And that line is also specifically in Return of the King. I think it's one of the last things to be said in the book. And I immediately recognized it because I could hear it basically in Gandalf's voice, because Pippin's my favorite character.
That doesn't sound so bad.
Right? So like it sounded so familiar because anything that like Pippin is in, I'm like, this is my boy.
It's a nice moment. It feels like we're witnessing, them sort of paying respects, and Kimmin comes in with some troops and condemns what's going on, and he says, this shrine's been condemned, you must vacate immediately, and
turn it into a pipeline or
it's going to be an aqueduct. I think he says
it's going to be an aqueduct.
And
they're gentrifying.
He's Kimmin the soldiers are kind of roughhousing the high priest, and Elendil kind of comes in and he stops him. He's like, let him, and he's protesting because he wants to take the shrine because maybe one of you can remember, but it's something about if the shrine contains the way forward or for those who fallen.
I did. I actually so there's a wonderful there are several wonderful Lord of the Rings creators, but one of them is Kay, where she posted me when a Númenorian says all the souls for whom she weeps will be lost, looking at the statue of Nienna. And I was like, can you tell me more about this lore? I don't know who that is. And there was a video that she'd actually just recently made.
Yeah, she made a video about Nienna. It's great.
Oh, wow.
You can probably formulate that way better than I can.
So There are a couple things in this scene that are significant from a linguistic point of view. First, everyone says "nasie" a few different times. The priest says it, everyone echoes, and then Elendil says it. But that's Quenya. So linguistically, we see that anyone who has a Quenya name, anyone who is speaking Quenya in Númenor, they are the faithful. So we have a distinct split between those who are going to be speaking Elvish and those who wouldn't ever.
Right.
And so you see a very easy split between the faithful and the kingsmen during this scene, not only with the conflict that then ensues, but linguistically. They're saying stuff in Elvish, and then the, quote, old faithful man comes forward, and he's the one who speaks in Sindarin. He says, Geis uchauden I feira nin I tol dynad, which is if she's not stored, or if I don't store this relic away, the souls for whom she weeps will be lost.
Yeah.
And this is a figurine for the Vala Nienna. Nienna, who is always depicted as weeping. But she is the Vala for grief and mourning, for finding strength and fortitude through hardship and grief, and courage, I think. But she is the Vala who was in charge of it's hard to put it in words, but she's the one who was the Vala that Gandalf followed before he became Gandalf. He was Olorin, and this Maya, because he's on the same level as Sauron, Gandalf as Olorin followed Nienna as like his mentor, if you want to view her that way. And perhaps the way that they depict her here is a guide for souls to the afterlife.
Okay.
Which for men, we don't know what that is. Nobody does. So she's just sort of seen as a bit of a shepherd here.
Yeah.
And they have a lovely little ritual for their fallen when they are faithful who believe in the Valar.
Yeah.
I actually thought it would have been really cool if once Elendil puts his little shell in the lake, that it goes out, symbolizing that his son isn't dead.
Oh, yeah.
Or when it did the single shot, I was hoping the light would go out.
The one that you are mourning cannot be mourned yet.
Exactly. That's
that would have
really
been really interesting,
right?
Yeah.
If it didn't continue floating away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping would happen, but it's okay.
Oh well, too late now.
Yeah.
It's my headcanon.
Too late.
Yeah, headcanon though. I love that.
So the priest wants the statue, and Kemen comes in. He's like, "Oh yeah, you want it? You want it?" And he throws it on the ground and shatters it like a complete tool bag.
He just picks it up and just goes, drop.
Yeah, like class. Like you couldn't write a worse dude.
Oh man.
And Elendil punches him as he deserves it. Right?
Oh, the punch felt across.
He's needed to be punched in the face.
Yeah, he needed to be
the whole season.
Yeah, and he finally gets just clocked. But then Kemen orders the guards to hold him. And
hold him. I'm gonna punch him back.
So he can punch him back wow, like just has zero. This
kid is trying so hard to look like an authority figure.
Yeah,
he's trying so hard.
Man, like
he's got a bowl cut though.
Oh, it's the worst. Like this guy has zero character. And Valandil stops him from punching Elendil, and a fight ensues. Everyone breaks out and fight.
He says, "Valar, forgive me," and then kicks Kemen's ass.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Kemen gets a couple blows in. I mean,
hits in, but you gotta think smaller muscles. He can't put too much force behind
into the water.
They hint that he's about to drown, like Valandil's about to almost drown, and he doesn't. He gets up, knocks him over.
That's body mechanics, though. It's way more difficult when you're being pushed down.
Yeah.
Sorry, my degree coming out again.
No, I'm glad you do, because I was like, part of me was like, I'm pissed about this because I feel like you could have like fallen backwards and brought him in,
That's-
but at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm
That's
like,
what I was thinking is, why don't you just go in and bring him with you?
yeah.
Yeah. So Kimmin, Valendil breaks Kimmin's arm. Just
Oh,
snaps
the
it.
crunch.
Oh, it's
Ugh.
that sound. Oh, it
That's
always,
what we call an anterior subluxation of the glenohumeral joint. That is your shoulder being popped out of joint.
gosh.
That was harsh.
He picks up the sword. He's about to, I don't
Kill
know.
Kemen.
They hint that he might kill him, but I don't think he ever would have.
I don't think he would have killed him.
Yeah, I don't think he would have
But-
kut him.
He would just stabbed him through the knee, something,
Something, yeah, to remember
Take him out
by.
of commission.
A scar here and there, but Elendil orders him not to put down the sword and walk away. He does, and the telegraph shot a mile away.
I actually didn't
Kemen
expect it.
stabs Valendil in the back through the chest and kills him.
I normally pride myself in like knowing those types of shots and what they mean, especially like the bus, coming to hit someone in the middle of the road.
Yeah,
Like this, I was so into the fight, I did not recognize
Oh,
the
really?
camera and how
Wow.
it all worked. That when he got
I
stabbed,
noticed that when Valendil was stepping forward after dropping the sword, that
Right.
the camera was in a place where we couldn't see Kemen.
Yeah.
and I just
I was like, oh no.
eyes wide
Oh,
open,
no.
pale, and I just started crying.
Yeah.
That was not on my bingo card.
No.
I know Valendil's eventually going to die, like all
yeah.
people do. But
But this
You know,
hit, this
hit different.
hard.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it going into watching this episode.
No.
If you had
Not at all.
told me that a
Yeah.
character was going to die, I wouldn't have picked Valendil.
Yeah, same.
And this was the other one that I was like, this reminds me of something. Like has the same vibe. I'm gonna try really hard not to cry again while talking about it, but the way that Elendil can't even pronounce correctly because I'm thinking too much, is holding him as he's dying is giving me such Aragorn and Boromir vibes that I could not hold it in. That I was like, this is giving almost like we didn't even have a whole ton with our little guy, and yet there was something so powerful about his death because he's there defending, doing what is right. He's basically a surrogate son at this point because that's
You
what
want me
he
to make it
calls him.
worse?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna make it worse.
Please make it worse. Make me cry.
The comparison that came to my mind is from a little movie called Hook. Rufio dying in Peter Pan's arms
Yeah.
and saying, "I wish I had a dad like you."
That did it.
That's the vibe I got, and I was like, "This is heartbreaking."
Not only did they already hurt
I'm getting
us
chills.
with the
So bad.
never-ending story, now there's this.
Sorry.
Oh man.
Did I make it worse?
You did. You made it. You see, my nose is already like
It's Rufio.
super red.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah, brutal.
hurt.
Brutal.
That hurt a lot.
And I mean,
Well,
and
just the trauma bond that had
Yeah.
grown between these two because
Yeah.
they both lost Isildur.
Well, and
And
he
now
also called him
Elendil is in
son.
the position to, the one who was left that he was closest to after losing his son.
yeah, and there was a
Is
nice,
now gone.
and I think the other misdirection, I think too, that I think we all didn't see it coming was there was that moment with Valendil and Elendil's daughter, blanking on her name,
Yarien.
where she's like, "You were my best friend," and she's like, I can go talk to somebody to get you reinstated. Like she sort of
Oh,
like
that's
wants,
right.
she wants like
That's
earlier in the episode, she wants like she seems to like care for him, right? And not and more than just a friend.
And Kemen did not like that, so of course
Yeah.
he was
Yeah,
going to
there's-
do something.
There is the jealousy.
The
there are a couple pointed shots there where we see Kemen reacting to
Yeah.
the two of them touching.
Right.
And then of
Men.
course, given the opportunity, take out the competition.
Exactly.
And that
So
he started it.
we don't quite know what the repercussions of this yet. This is the end of the Númenor
we'll see.
for this episode. But Elendil
Nepotism.
seems to be arrested and will probably be blamed for the incident at the shrine.
I actually have a theory. So I was talking with some friends about how the internet is coming up with creative ways for Kemen to die. or be hurt.
I've seen that.
And I came up with my own, and it's not like a short like haha. It's like I was so mad and emotional that I wrote, I want him to be drowned by Elendil when Kemen thinks he's finally getting away from some sort of destruction. To make it even more driven, I think Kemen will betray or abandon Eärien, causing her death. So suddenly, when Kemen is pulled off his horse, when it looks like he's going to get away, it's Elendil, and he drowns him in anger and revenge. That's what I want
everybody's
to happen.
getting creative with how they want this character's demise.
Yeah.
I think it depends on whether he becomes one of the Nazgul or not.
Yeah. Ooh.
But
Fuck that. I want him to die.
well, you know, like
But
if he becomes the Witch King, he gets killed by a woman. So that's kind of nice.
There you
That
go.
is also
Yeah, there you go.
We have a certain comfort in knowing this dude's probably gonna die. Because
yeah.
of the
I
fate
mean,
of Númenor.
yeah, well, not only that, but I mean, like, I just don't think you create a character this awful and not have.
Can
know,
we
like,
have a moment of appreciation
yeah.
though? Because the writers and the performance by the actor.
Sure.
Leon
so
did
good.
Yeah, I was thinking
so well
too, watching the show.
being
is-
the worst.
Yeah.
That the rage that I saw online
Yeah.
and the grief that I saw online was so visceral. I was like,
Yeah.
you did such a good job.
It's so good when you have a character like that. It's like when you are watching or reading Harry Potter and you hate Umbridge more than Voldemort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're back in a Region now after the
Back in
after
the Region, here we go.
Yeah. And
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, and Annatar's putting on a masterclass yet again. Celebrimbor is like, "Hey, did you do anything to the rings, by the way?" And he's like, long pause,
me?
long enough pause to where anybody should have been like, "You did, didn't you?" You know?
Yeah.
And he's like, and he goes, "No." And then there's a moment too where he's, "But we did," and he.
That was
and-
so good.
So
Not
masterful.
placing the blame on anybody, but he's putting it on himself, making it
with
his
it's like
more
together.
so.
We did.
Yeah.
Because then he points out that the deception
Right.
behind the letter that we forged these rings
Yep.
under the cloak of deception. That you told your high king that we weren't doing this. And
Yep.
that deception has infected the rings. And
Yep.
not only did you deceive, but I saw you deceive and I didn't stop you.
Therefore,
it's
it's
our fault.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he even poses a solution. He's like, "Listen, you go to the king, apologize, you know." And he's like, "Cumber's
Or
like,
psychology.
can't do
I can't do that. Like, they'd
He'll
never
never
be
let
able
me
to-"
forge anything again.
Right.
Yeah.
And for a
so-
craftsman who desperately wants to be
That is the-
remembered, that is death.
yeah. So
And
That
he-
is artistic
and
suicide.
He knew that and knew exactly what to say.
And of course, Annatar knew that. He wouldn't have
course.
suggested it if he
If-
thought that Celebrimbor
yeah.
would actually do it.
Yep.
yeah, chef's
Reverse
kiss,
psychology. hard.
masterclass. Celebrimbor's just being played at this point, and it's
So played.
and again, props to the writers, props to
Yes.
them crafting the show. Most of the time when I'm watching moments like this, I'm like, don't be an idiot. You know, like, come on, you're fun. But listen, Annatar's making a pretty good argument here. Like, I'm like, yeah, you kind of did lie. Maybe that has something to, like, if I am not as ingrained in the lore as you guys are and know all the things and blah, 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 blah. And if I'm not noticing he's saying mumbo jumbo before he puts the mithril in, I'm thinking maybe it is, like maybe it is.
The beauty is
Yeah.
that he's not necessarily fully lying. Like the
Yeah.
grain of truth is what Sauron is so good at manipulating. Because
it's good.
is the craft, like, this is something that's directly from Tolkien, that the creation of art at the level that the elves make it and at the level that Feanor and these great craftsmen make it, it is truly not just an imparting of skill but of spirit.
Yeah.
We see this dynamic where Miriel, who is Feanor's mother, she loses all will to live and basically imparts all of her spirit into the creation of Feanor as a person. And then Feanor, having so much spirit, makes these great things, in his lifetime. But he imparts his spirit, or he uses the light of the two trees in the Silmarils. This is not just an imparting of skill, it is an imparting of energy and spirit. And so the close communion of Annatar and Celebrimbor in the crafting of these rings. That's how Sauron is able to insert himself into these things and influence them. But it goes both ways, that Celebrimbor's influence is what makes the three so powerful. That he went in with such great intentions is
to save his ring.
The three rings are a testament to Celebrimbor's spirit, that he is kind, that he is truly wanting the best for the world around him. And we see that used against him here in just a masterful stroke of writing. Like the writing is so good here.
Yeah. Props.
Because it's either you confess to your High King, or we forge ahead deeper into the maelstrom.
Absolutely. And he does. He says, he comes around and he's like, maybe you're right. We can use these rings. And he gives a rousing speech to his interns.
To his interns.
That I'm calling his I'm sure they have a beautiful Elvish name for intern.
No, it's just Gwythy Meerdine, man.
Yeah,
they're just cool dudes.
But it's not really that arousing. I was laughing because it's like he's actually pretty bad right here. He's sort of like, we got to do better, and you assholes got to do better too. And if I find any one of you assholes not doing your weight, you're
no Smith no longer.
Yeah, you're no longer with me. And I'm kind of like, this is not really the pep talk. I think these guys.
This is bad. Well, this is bad cop, good cop.
Exactly.
It is.
So he's kind of like yelling at him a bit, and he's like, we're gonna do the rings because we got to redeem ourselves. We got to redeem ourselves, because the dwarven rings aren't great, and we gotta maybe it'll make our legacy. And he says he's like blah 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 blah, and he walks upstairs and he's like, now
we
get to work.
We have to not only make these good, but we have to redeem the seven, and we have to redeem ourselves.
Right.
And the I think that it's really great too that his speech was also just like a little aggressive and not quite who they think knew him as, because it feeds into the further deception that this fiery
was
figure
this dark spirit that
them.
Mirdania saw.
And did
Good
it
point.
fit so well into that theory.
Yeah.
And then he goes upstairs just shaking.
Yeah, his hands are shaking, and he can hear just footsteps away Annatar step in as good cop and reassure everyone and say, I believe that we can do this, and I know you won't disappoint me, and you won't disappoint him.
Right.
And he tries to explain away why Celebrimbor is being harsh.
Right.
And
it's good. It's so good.
It manipulates Mirdania further. It manipulates Celebrimbor because it also shows Annatar in a positive light. Look how he's even defending me now.
Yeah, and it places him in a more revered fashion to everyone else, so that they'll listen to his
he's
they'll look away if he's doing something probably that he made. You know what I'm saying? Like it just endears him more to them, where they're probably going to turn a blind eye to him.
Again, you like the good
doing
cop.
thing. Yeah, exactly. So this is a well played situation. I love this scene. It's really well done, and we pan out the window. This is the end of Region's story, but we pan out and we see that orcs are approaching. And that's the end of the episode. But let's rewind a little bit because we still have a little bit of Khazad-dûm and Linden.
We had a little bit, a couple little scenes in between.
Yeah, so Khazad-dûm, we're back, and Durin is bursting the door, and he's trying to convince his father to not use the rings. The rings are a problem.
There's something wrong with these rings. There's devilry put into these rings.
Yeah, and this is right before this. The king is telling, and he's telling Narvi, he's like, listen, like you set these restrictions so we wouldn't mine too deep, and he's like, no, get rid of those restrictions. There'd be gold in them hills, and by them hills I mean down in the mine, and we get a nice shot of like a cavern which is like riddled with like just tons of gold.
Mithril and gold.
And to shut up Durin, to shut up his son, he's basically like, no, that's great. Yeah, the rings. But by the way, you did so good. You brought these rings to us. Blah 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 blah. You
were right. Befriending the elves was the right move.
I'm
exactly.
Proud of
and
you.
he's like,
I'm so proud of you. Here, take your Durin deathless collar back that marks you as the heir of the kingdom.
Exactly. cut to Durin walking into his wife wearing the thing, and she's like, "Did you tell? Oh, son of a."
Yeah. She sees the collar, and she's like, "You didn't do."
Yeah, totally. Total.
We had an agreement here.
Yeah, total. Like the husband's like, "Oh, I tried.
I tried. I promise, I tried.
I tried.
And she's like, "You fool," like can't not love him, but like,
And then she
great scene.
makes Durin promise to
Yeah.
never wield a ring himself.
Right. And he says yes.
I believe he does.
Chris, back me up here with the lore. Does Durin the Fourth actually ever wield a ring of power? I know Durin the Third is given one, but we never particularly know.
So yeah, he must, because this would be that would make it be the ring that ends up coming to as a Thror and Thrain.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we don't. There's nothing said that specifically about these characters, because they're like, to me, I think it's a little strange that we have two Durins at the same time, because
I've heard that criticism.
It's not just like a name that they give them. It's they really consider that Durin, the spirit of the first father of the dwarves, will come back and sort of be reincarnated.
Inhabited.
And then that's when they will change the king's name to Durin. So it's strange that there's two at the same time. And I know that's kind of a little bit of a tangent when you're asking about the rings. It's just that there's not a precedent to say, does Durin the Third give Durin the Fourth a ring? But we do know that it gets passed down the line of kings, so
and we do know that
for sure it's reasonable that he will.
Delving to the point that they awaken the Balrog later.
True.
That happens
right.
in the Third Age. We're
that's
really
a third
supposed to
age.
have the
That's
Balrog
really?
in the Second Age.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, the Balrog
interesting.
doesn't get
Lots
released
and lots
until
of,
well
it's
into
sort of
the
like how we
Third
talked
Age.
about the Barrow Wights last time too. They're bringing in a lot of elements and there's a little anachronistic things, but not a huge deal really. It's just it's a different version.
Okay.
I do see the Balrog being a major source of excitement as far as fandom is concerned. If you're talking about the dwarves of Moria, there you go.
Yeah.
Khazad-dûm
Too tempting.
is there for Khazad-dûm is there for the story of its downfall, just like Númenor is there for the story of its downfall.
Yeah.
Eregion is there for the story of its downfall. Like that. This will be a running theme.
Yeah, and I'm here for it. I still I remember watching Fellowship in the theaters, and to this day, them going through the Mines of Moria and Gandalf falling at blew my mind. Just absolutely just was in the I will still go back and just watch that entire scene from the moment they enter at the doors of Durin to when Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that is to me that is some of the best 30 minutes of filmmaking ever, right? I am that is incredible. It is just awesome. It's like fantasy, just chef's kiss.
Yeah,
fantasy.
the Peter Jackson Fellowship of the Ring movie was my first exposure to Tolkien. I didn't read the books prior to the movies. I was a teenager, so I was angsty as fuck, but I saw Fellowship of the Ring, and I was moaning Myrtle level distraught with that part of I 100% believed death of Gandalf.
Yeah.
And
oh really?
And
yeah.
Because I hadn't read the books, I didn't know. So it was truly impactful, and I mean that movie is what sparked my hyperfixation on Elvish for 2 decades now. So
awesome.
it's good storytelling and it's good film. Yeah.
So we were back in Linden, and Elrond's done running.
He ran all the way back to Linden.
He ran. God bless this kid, running his heart out.
Barely even winded.
Yeah, he's just running down the stairs.
He's just a powerhouse of cardio talent.
Yeah. Man, and he tells Gil-galad, "We gotta go. Celebrimbor, they're gonna attack.
Adar isn't in Mordor. He's on the footsteps of Eregion.
Yeah,
and if Eregion falls, that is the jewel of elvendom, we can't let a region
We can't.
fall.
Yeah, exactly. And he shows the ring, and he's like, "Listen, Galadriel, is with Adar, blah 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 blah." And he's like, "Nah, I got these visions, and Sauron's the real problem here. We gotta make sure we're all combined and combine our forces to fight Sauron." And so we're it's our first glimpse of the ring, sort of, again, not necessarily corrupting him, but just making him feel.
It's still an influence.
It's an influence, and making him make decisions that probably he would have made differently if the ring wasn't on his hand. Any thoughts on this scene? It's quick and it's short, and it kind of just gives you a sense that, like, okay, the impending doom of Eregion is here.
I think we see a slight shift in Gil-galad from having Elrond be his trusted herald to there being a connection between him and Galadriel as ring bearers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We see a slight shift in Galadriel has had visions, I've had visions. This is tapping into something that's different for us. And Elrond doesn't understand. Because Elrond hasn't used a ring.
Yeah.
Will that be changing anytime soon? We'll see what they do.
Oh, no.
Because he's literally holding one in his hand. He's hell-bent against using it.
Yeah.
And Elrond didn't want the rings to be used, even as he's speaking in the Council of Elrond in Lord of the Rings. So this is not a stance that he changes on, really.
Yeah. I hope it's not a stance that he turns on real quick either. I feel like they did a lot of work. I want to see
a process.
Yeah, they need to
I want it to be a struggle.
Yeah. So we're back with Adar and Adar's camp, and we see Galadriel get rolled in a wooden, like, prison, a rolling prison.
Yeah.
They let her out, and Adar's there to greet her, and she pulls a knife on him, and it's like, "I'll kill you. I'm gonna take you out." Like,
I'll do it. I dare. Don't dare me.
Yeah, and he's kind of like, "I think we have the same enemy." And it kind of ends. That's where we kind of end the show. Any last thoughts on that scene?
I thought that was the point for Galadriel giving herself up. She gave the ring to Elrond. She put herself in a situation where it was very clear that she was going to be captured and taken to Adar. Like, if
Which
that
is kind of where
wasn't
she
her
wants to
goal,
go.
yeah, like,
they could have easily escaped. She didn't have to do that, but she's gonna use Adar.
And if she had any sort of knife, she could have gotten herself out of
easily.
out of the
She
paddy
could have
wagon
escaped.
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because that last scene in the last episode, she clearly was trying to get away, right? And then Adar stopped her, right? But she probably could have taken him. I don't know. It's a little, but he's ancient and old and seems pretty unkillable. Not unkillable, but just harder to kill than the average orc, right?
He's a formidable opponent.
Right, exactly. So I don't know. Like, they kind of made it seem like, because she does say, "I'll delay them as long as I can," right? In the sense that
either she's going to make a bunch of trouble or take out their leader so that they're a bit more directionless. What do we actually do? He's not.
Yeah, so I don't know if her goal was to necessarily get captured, but it does seem a little like the plan here seemed like they did hint a little bit like.
But yeah, we have a common enemy, and I think that's the closing line of the episode. Yeah.
Which, I mean, what, just because she hates Sauron too, she's going to be okay with war on Eregion?
Yeah.
This doesn't really make sense.
I don't think that she, wants war to come to Eregion.
Yeah.
But she likely thinks that if she can get in there and get Sauron distracted by Adar, that she'll be able to put things right with Celebrimbor, and things will somehow be okay. Or at least fewer casualties.
This is a great show. This is much better than season 1, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
And so please go tell your friends, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, watching this, you're liking what you're hearing, convince your friends to sign up to Prime, for a couple months. Watch yourself some Rings of Power. It's good stuff.
I can't believe we're telling people to give Bezos
I
money.
know, right?
I know.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, but don't. But if you don't,
I don't like it.
If you don't, we don't get any more cool Rings of Power. So
There's
you
no
don't have to
ethical
give them-
consumption under capitalism, and we just have to sometimes do things we don't like and get in order to get the things we want.
Yeah.
You gotta pay for shit if you want it. All right, well, let's wrap it up. That's it for today's episode. We'll be back next week to recap episode 6. Thanks for listening and watching, and don't forget to leave a comment and all that stuff. Because listen, if when you do that stuff, it helps other people like you find us, and we all want to hang out and be one big happy nerd family, and that's how this all comes to work, right? And that's why we bring on our friends on. Thank you for joining, Chris. Chris, thank you for joining. And WizardWayKris, thank you for joining and bringing your incredible knowledge of the Elven language. Again, you can find Chris online at WizardWayKris, wherever you're online. It sounds like you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter.
I'm on most, but I'm most active currently on TikTok and on Instagram Threads.
Threads, there you
is
go.
where I've been posting all of my details after every episode.
I love it.
I also just started an Elvish letter subscription service, so if you'd like to receive Elvish letters in the mail to decode,
I mean,
that's
sounds
something that I do now on my
fucking
Patreon.
incredible.
So
Absolutely.
check me out over on Patreon, WizardWayKris.
We will do that. Yes, 100% go do that. Thank you, Chris. And don't forget to check out CouchSoup.com for all things unfiltered and authentic in pop culture, where we break down all the nerdy stuff that you love. If you like what we're doing here, become a member there, because it supports us and it supports the people that make shows like this and the writers of that pop culture website. So until next time, thank you everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.